Welcome back, everyone, to a special series that I'm thrilled to be hosting here on LinkedIn called The Entrepreneur's Chair. Throughout this series, my goal is to provide you with authentic and intimate conversations with trailblazing entrepreneurs that are reshaping the business scene in Austin. From startup founders to seasoned business moguls, we'll dive deep into conversations about the triumphs, the challenges, and the pivotal moments that have shaped their entrepreneurial journey. I'm so honored today to have with us Tanya Miller, President and Chief Risk Officer of PrimeBank of Texas. Headquartered in Austin, Texas, she has over 20 years' experience in the banking industry. Tanya is a seasoned leader known for her strategic vision and commitment to excellence in risk management. As a co-founder and president of BAT Investments, the holding company that acquired PrimeBank of Texas in September 2021, Tanya has been instrumental in driving the bank's growth and operational success. Tanya is dedicated to helping small business owners navigate economic challenges, offering insights into robust risk management and regulatory compliance. She advocates for strategies that enhance economic resilience amid high interest rates and credit challenges. Tanya has served as an advisory board member for the Texas Tech School of Banking and the Texas Banking Association. Notably, she is a 2024 Austin Business Journal Women in Business nominee, recognized for her outstanding contributions to the industry. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you.
I'm so honored for you to be here today. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, I have some questions for you. Tanya, you have an amazing story as far as how you started. You were in college and you were a teller, right? So how did those early experiences shape your career trajectory?
Sure. So, definitely ended up in banking just by happenstance. Had a friend, needed a job. They knew a banker in town. I was in Lubbock at Texas Tech, and set me up for a job interview, and they had a teller position open. So, no real thought to being in banking for the rest of my life at that point in time. And so really just, started learning what banking was about. We all kind of know we walk into the bank, we open our first checking account, do those things, but really don't think a lot about the significance of community banking to kind of, your community and really the entire economic system. And so that really started, as far as one takeaway from that experience was just sparking the passion for community banking and really starting to understand what that meant at a deeper level. As I continued on in that role and got more experience and talked to more people in different areas of the bank, I started really kind of putting that with my upbringing and my family's kind of blue-collar entrepreneurial spirit, and realizing how much the local bank played a part in that. And then thinking through too, that same relationship that my parents and grandparents had with their businesses were the reason why I opened my account there, and had my very first checking account there, knew all the bankers by name, and, just really took that for granted growing up about how special that is. And then too, I was a student and an athlete in a small town, and anytime we needed a donation, you walked into your community bank, and they always were happy to give and support everything going on in the community. So I just started realizing, this is kind of a neat job. This is a kind of neat place, to think about a career. And at that time, my goals were set on being an attorney. That's what I had wanted to be since I was, I think, a 7th grade career fair, watched a prosecutor give their spiel, and I was, oh, that's what I want to do. I was a very serious child. That's going to be my life. And had my sights set on that, and then, then changed to risk management. So always been very, exciting like that from a personality standpoint. But, those things were really kind of starting to open my eyes to something different than what I had, had my eyes set on as far as going to college and, what was going to happen after that. So definitely just piqued my interest there. And as, the next few years going through college and talking to mentors in the bank who, all had ideas of what I should do next, they started pointing me in the direction of regulatory, go be a regulator for a few years, really learn, that part of the bank, and then the sky's the limit for you. So that was great experience and kind of great mentoring that went on in those early years. I will say too, kind of the second part of that, the takeaway from my early time in banking was just how valuable that has been as a leader and an executive in a bank is understanding that entry-level position. Just being able to understand what they're going through every day, to strategize to make that better for our customers, having, done the job makes you have just a totally different perspective as an executive who's maybe never started at that position and worked their way through the bank.
That's great. Sounds like you have a lot of focus on great customer service and working with your clients there.
Yes.
Right down to the front line. It's funny because during COVID, I think people finally realized that having a relationship, a true relationship, someone you could actually call in the banking industry was important. So I think it's elevated what people want in their relationships with a bank.
Yes, it was certainly a great stage for community banks during that time with PPP and, the ability to really help those who were, going through big challenges at that point in time. And then too, those who, weren't even pursuing a PPP loan, but needed, to skip a payment on a loan or to do different things. I really think the community banking industry stepped up during that time and, was able to help a lot of people. And really the smaller banks where people had true relationships. So, that was, I think, set us apart from those Wall Street banks and the things that where you don't really have that face-to-face contact and that person that that knows your name every time you walk in the door.
So what I find fascinating is you work with so many small businesses. So I'm sure you're seeing trends, picking up on these patterns that are occurring. What kind of advice do you give to entrepreneurs that are facing all the challenges that we have in the current economic environment?
Absolutely. People are feeling kind of the uncertainty of the times at this point. Small businesses, thankfully in Austin, we have a very resilient economy, and in Texas, compared to some of those in other areas. But I do think people are feeling it. It's feeling like it's stretching out, and some of the challenges maybe that they thought would be short term are starting to feel like they're not going to go away for a period of time at least. I don't have anything, that's insightful into every business more than the owner themselves. But I would say that, especially if these small businesses have debt, to understand your debt structure, because if you got a loan, let's say 2 or 3 years ago, and it was at a 4 or 5% interest rate, do you know if you have an adjusting rate period? In 3 or 4 years, is that rate going to change? Are we coming up on that rate change period? I would also say know that your loan agreement and whether or not you have debt service coverage covenants or other financial covenants that you could get hung up on because your cash flows have gone down. And I think a lot of people, not just interest rates affecting that because your payment goes up, but also, fixed costs have significantly increased over the last few years. Namely, things like commercial insurance have tripled in price. So all these fixed and overhead costs are going up for business owners, and they could also be facing an increase in financing cost. And so that catches people by surprise if they don't fully understand their debt documents and what they're being, expected to maintain. So,
I'm curious if let's say someone took out a loan and they're facing a little bit of a crisis, when do they reach out and talk to the bank about it?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
Especially if you are making those decisions of restructuring, or, if you're going to downsize or if you're going to expand and try to grow yourself out of your problem, there are going to be times where it takes an adjustment period. Your financials might not look as strong for a period of time, and a banker will work with you if you have a good banker and good relationship with your bank. Certainly understanding that every business is different, every business is facing challenges right now, and a banker has no interest in taking your assets and doing those things because it doesn't benefit either one of us.
Correct.
You're looking to continue to have a profitable business. We are too, by collecting the loan on the contractual basis. And so I think we will work hand in hand with any person having a challenge. We also take steps to identify those people on our end. We look at what industries could be facing those challenges, who we have loans. We reach out and check how are things going. We get ongoing financials if we start seeing trends. We make a phone call and say, like, do you see this happening? Can you tell us what your plan is? How can we help? So
that's really good, because I think sometimes people are scared to do that.
Yes.
They're just almost feel like if they reach out, something bad will happen, versus seeing the banking and the banker specifically as really part of your team.
Right. As small as we are, we probably have 150 commercial loans. So that's 150 unique individual small businesses that we get to see the challenges that each one of them are facing, sometimes how some of them have been resilient in different ways. And so we can help other people who don't have that purview, see ways that maybe they could also, improve their financial situation, improve their structure and different things that could help them out, because we've seen it done with other customers who are thriving in the same environment. So it kind of gives us, an insight into so many different industries and so many different businesses and so many different ways that they're ran.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I was talking to people about venture funding, they would always say, well, make sure it's smart money, right? And it applies to get a smart bank, someone that actually is going to come alongside of you and not just some big institution out there.
Yes. And, and that structure, going back to the beginning of the question, just that can make or break a business if it's not structured correctly, if it's in a way that you're setting them up to fail. If you have too high of expectations, when you trip a covenant on your loan agreement, you're technically in default. So having that, that understanding of what the expectation is on the front end, working with your bank to understand those terms and what that actually means, asking questions, all those things are very important, because you can set yourself up to fail just with the way that the loan is structured. So,
wow, good to know. Thank you for sharing. There are not a lot of women at the top echelons in the banking industry. That's my impression. So as a prominent female leader, what unique challenges have you faced in your career?
Sure. I don't know that they've been unique compared to other women in any male-dominated field. Those challenges are what they are. I would say mine were more around my younger part of my career. Okay. So I was a regulator at 22 years old. And I looked about 12 during that time frame of my life. And so I was going in, and as I moved up quickly and was fortunate in that role to have some of those right place, right time opportunities, continued to get more and more responsibility. And moving into the Great Recession period as a regulator, I was leading exams. Later in my 20s, but still certainly looked much younger than I was, and sitting across a table from a bank CEO or, president or other executive running a department in a larger bank who often reminded me they had been doing it longer than I had been alive.
Of course.
Those issues came up often. We started seeing more and more severe downturns in banking at that time. So you're having very crucial conversations with these executives, very important to their livelihood. I always tried to remind myself that it's a job for me, but their job is, much more personal. I'm going to move on to another bank. I'm going to go and review them the next week, and this person's going to be left with findings that I had to give them, and having to rebuild those things within their institution. And so a lot of times they took that very personally, and those could be heated conversations. They could be challenging. And so just learning to kind of maneuver those situations and to have confidence, to be well prepared, to be knowledgeable about what I was bringing to them, and also to be willing to admit when you were wrong. And work through that in a graceful way with these people who were somewhat intimidating and all these things. So that ability to be faced with that and kind of thrown into that situation at a really young age in my career, just, I think, developed a confidence I don't think I would have developed otherwise. And that confidence has really taken me through the rest of my career, because I think, in general, women tend to lack confidence, and that is what holds them back from moving through their career in the way that a man does. Going to many, many women conferences and listening to, the tendencies and, even being in groups of women where we're being asked to take personality quizzes and things like that of what affects your, work life. And most of them are low on confidence and don't put themselves out there for a promotion or those sorts of things. And I think when you get used to dealing with failure or challenges and, taking those head on, you can move up a little faster, maybe face some of those challenges and not let it affect you and get you down. Just step up to the next challenge.
Very well said. I think that's inspirational to all those women and young people that are trying to establish themselves in their career. So thank you for that. So when you look at your career to date, what do you has been the most fulfilling, rewarding part of what you've been doing?
I would say just the relationships that I've built over the years, from my early days, my mentors, those who inspired me to reach further in my career and to try new things, to the peers that I've had along the way that, are lifelong friends that I still reach out to, that are at other banks and other institutions, or even taking a totally different path, and use them for a sense of inspiration, and just support. That system of support has been great, to look back and see not only friends do that, but my family, even my family being forgiving and having to be busy all the time, missing things. I think just to be able to look back and realize it's all been worth it, and that you just have this great line of people who've supported you and relationships that you've built, and, to really be able to pinpoint how they've affected my life. I think too, looking back and proving to yourself that you can do hard things. Sometimes we're so busy in the day-to-day and what comes next. And, my business partner and I have laughed through the last few years of starting up the bank because we didn't stop and celebrate anything. We're just on to the next thing, So there's been a couple of times where we've had deep conversations about we really need to look back and be proud of what we've accomplished, because we're always looking ahead and what's the next thing, and what do we tackle next, and how do we continue to improve. And to look back is really satisfying, to say, I did that and that was hard, and a lot of people haven't done that, and make sure that you take those moments to do that, because that's really fulfilling as far as taking on things that other people haven't tried.
That's a great reminder to everybody. Yes. Just slow down a little bit.
Yes.
Celebrate the success.
Take it all in.
Take it all in, because it refuels the energy cells, right?
Gives you energy to tackle the next day.
A lot going on in the economy, in the world. Asking you to pull out your crystal ball. But anything that you're seeing as far as economic trends that are occurring?
I think this is a really interesting time, and we've said that many times throughout history.
Sure.
But I think this is certainly one of those post-COVID things are not economically in a normal cycle. So predicting what's happening, every day we're getting conflicting economic results coming out on employment and inflation and spending, and you really don't know what's going to happen next. And I think again, people are feeling that uncertainty. I think if I were bringing out my crystal ball, I would say that things are not going to change quickly in either direction, because we're just in a very unstable environment, and doing that I would think the powers that be would think that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I would expect rates to stay fairly inflated for a while. I don't think inflation is going to be a quick fix. I think we're going to be in a somewhat challenging scenario for a long period of time. We're seeing some real estate devaluation in Austin, after many, many years of prosperity in that area. I think people not returning to work is causing some supply issues in commercial real estate. And the interesting thing with that is it's not an immediate thing that we feel because those are long-term tenants. You have leases in place for 15, 20 years on some of those buildings. So I think over the next probably 10 years, we'll feel that gradually continue to be an issue in any metro area like Austin. I would say, too, we talked a little bit previously about the insurance cost and different things going up. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, every part of doing business is just getting more expensive, from hiring people to your fixed cost, taxes, insurance, and such, supplies. So I think those challenges are going to continue to exist, and we just have to figure out how to operate our businesses around those challenges, probably be brutally honest with ourselves about assessing things that we could cut back on, maybe whether we should not do the next expansion, or maybe cut back, in size and complexity of our companies, and just, really get down to the bread and butter and do what we do best. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's going to be a little bit of a drawn out challenge.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see if we get a rate cut before the end of the year.
Yes. Yes, there's, I think things were trending in that direction, and then maybe some market things that came out this week make you feel like maybe that's not going to happen. So it is really kind of hard to predict what's going to happen next. And, and then an election cycle always throws a wrench in that too, because it's not always about the economy. There's also political agendas at play. Mm-hmm. And so it just makes it really hard. And I think you take that into mind as a business owner when you're building your strategy for the next 12 or 24 months. Is kind of plan for every option. Mm-hmm. And know what your, threats and your strengths are going to be in each one of those scenarios, and make sure that you have a plan depending on which way it goes.
Yeah, one of my guests recently was talking about the scenario planning, and listening to you, it seems like taking into consideration the economic, the banking, the interest in different scenarios is going to be really important to do.
Right. And, some of those things are fixed cost, and there's not a lot you can do about it. So, really looking at what you do control. And I think, too, just the plan of knowing that it could go this way or that way. And if it does, what are our next steps? And, I think probably the wrong thing to do is to be sold on a direction it's going and only plan for that direction. And we, thankfully in banking, our regulators make us plan for everything. Right. Maybe to a fault. But we do, have to use modeling in order to figure out what would happen if it went this way, what would happen if it went that way. So in our world, we're always trying to just figure out the next steps depending on what happens instead of guessing what happens. So,
well, and that kind of leads into when you, in the economic conditions the way they are, the uncertainty, how do you prepare and support businesses that are facing that?
We do monitor our portfolio of customers. We know what businesses they're in. We monitor that as well and kind of stratify our risk that way. Mm-hmm. So we are updating financial analysis on a regular basis, and we're seeing where those, potential risks lie with our customers, not only for our sake, but to reach out to them and to continue to try to support them through it. So I think that is the best thing that we can do for them identify it early, us identify it early, and work together to come up with solutions that will help kind of get over the challenge that we're all facing right now. So,
I like to end each of these sessions with a couple of questions. The first one, what is it that you believe makes authentically a successful entrepreneur?
I think the definition is having an idea and making it materialize, but I think it's deeper than that. Having that idea, being brave enough to do it, and also working hard enough to do it, and then not being satisfied when you get there, which a little bit of what we talked about previously, looking back and making sure that you recognize how far you've came. Mm-hmm. But I think a true entrepreneur is never satisfied. That if you do check a box, you're on to the next thing. And what can I do bigger and better than the last thing? So I think that's what really is unique about that entrepreneurial spirit and being successful as an entrepreneur, is that you're just constantly, trying to figure out the next idea and how to make that come to fruition. And I think, too, there's a special part about being an entrepreneur is, you hear people say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I totally disagree with that. If you love what you do, you work harder than everyone else. You're just fully, in the grind and passionate about what you do. And I think that's special because not everybody has that. And over my career, I've learned that not everybody has an entrepreneurial spirit. Sure. And as much as you would like them to be as passionate about the job as you are, they're not. They're just there to do the job. So I think that's what makes you stand apart, is that you're willing to work harder than anybody else to meet that goal.
Love that. And how would you define success as an entrepreneur?
Kind of doubling down on that thought, is that for me, I don't know when I'm going to check that box that I think I've been successful. I always want to do more and be better. Maybe one day when I reach the point of retirement and feel like I'm done, I hope that success looks like, meeting all those goals, building that company, earning respect of my peers, and really leaving a legacy of a great solid company, a bank that, can live on for years and years and years and continue to serve the community way after I'm gone. And then people who, have been able to influence to want to continue to make that better. So just a legacy that, can live on well past me, I think, is what I will consider success in my industry and in my endeavors.
That's great. So, having that impact,
yes.
Right? It's bigger than us. Tanya, thank you so much for this time together. It was very enjoyable and lots of insights.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it too.
Okay, thank you.